Photoshop CS gives you the ability to open raw images. Whenever you go to open an image that's shot in the raw format, you'll see this window here. This is the Camera Raw plugin, and it's been boosted up for Photoshop CS. There's a lot of advantages in shooting in RAW because we can post-process the images. In other words, we can ignore the settings here that were taken on the camera, and we can set up custom settings here, such as change the white balance. And these images will not be processed until we open them in Photoshop. Another great advantage is it allows us to open 16-bit images. We can choose 16 or 8-bit channels here. We can set the size and the color space. The main things that we're going to look at, though, there's three things are the most important things you want to set. One is going to be the color temperature, which is tied in here to the white balance, so we can cool it down, which makes it more blue, or warm it up, make it more yellow. Or just choose as shot. Now we'll set the exposure and the shadows. The best way to do this is to hold down the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac, and then slide the slider. As we slide it, we'll see the threshold. Notice now we start to see some spots, and that means that we're at the threshold of where the highlights are starting to clip. So what we do is just take it back to the very beginning of the clip and release. Notice how much brighter that is. And you can view the histogram as you're working. And the best thing for the histogram is for the low point to be in the shadows, and the high point right here, the low point of the curve, to be in the highlights. Now do exactly the same for the shadows. Hold down the Alt or the Option key and slide it till it begins to clip. You can see it right there. Release. And notice how nice and bright that's looking. The white balance is looking good. We could make some slight adjustments here in the temperature here if we wanted to. We can click on the detail option. This allows us to change some options. We want to zoom up to 100% to see what's going on here. And hold down the space bar and we can click and drag to move around in the image. This option here allows us to adjust the sharpness. We could turn it right up, make the image very sharp, or turn it down, and there'd be no sharpness. Just have a little bit there. The default setting is pretty good. You don't want to increase it too much, or you can start bringing artifacts into your image. Luminance smoothing. This is a great way for reducing grain in an image. We can pull that all the way up. And what that will do is it will just reduce the grain on the grayscale information and not on the color. Notice the clouds here, how smooth they're looking now, and the face, how smooth it's looking. Let's reduce it all the way down. You can see a little bit of grain, but it's not really a very grainy image, so I would set that pretty low. And then the other option is to reduce the color noise. This particular image has no color noise, but it works the same way as the luminance smoothing, and we would just adjust that to get rid of the noise if there was any present in the image. There's another setting up here called the Advanced. Click on the Advanced, and notice we have two more options. There's Lens and Calibrate. Click on Lens, and you'll notice that there's two options here. Chromatic Aberration. And this allows us to reduce, let's see if we can find some in here. Notice on the edges here, with digital photography and photography in general, because of the lens, it can cause color right on the edges. And we can adjust that using the chromatic aberration. Notice there that it's very red. Notice there that it's a greenish color. And we just neutralize those by using these sliders. Now to check the vignetting, we need to go back to Fit and View. And what can happen sometimes using lenses is it can be a little dark around the edges, and that's called lens vignette. And by adjusting this slider, we can compensate for it. And now that'll brighten it up. So we can also neutralize that. And then finally just calibrate. And this is where we can just make some very fine tuning to the colors. I wouldn't recommend touching these settings unless you really know what you're doing. And once we've set our settings and we're happy with it, click OK. And this image will be processed right now, and it will be launched in Photoshop in just a moment. It's a pretty large file, so it can take a little while to process. And there we go. There's the image in Photoshop. And it's all ready for use here. And the main thing is just to get your brightness right, to get your exposure right, and get your color balance right, and now we've got a very good image that we can start working with. And that's one of the advantages of using Camera Raw.